Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all on this day where we are organizing our international webinar. Today, we have with us Ben, sir. I met him through Instagram, and he is a very keen learner and very keen educator. He has always cleared all my doubt related to nutrition or any case that I presented to him. So I'm glad that he joined us from all the way from UK from his busy schedule, and he was more than happy to contribute for our this charity webinar. So I welcome Ben, sir, and I will request him to continue his class.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Is it all right if I share my screen? Okay,
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Let me just share this. Give me 1 minute and I'll... Okay, so everyone should be able to see my presentation now.
Yes, sir.
Everyone can see the screen okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, awesome. Let me move this out the way a second so that I can, there we go. Right, is everyone happy if I make a start?
Yes, sir, you can start.
Awesome. Sorry, I can't see or hear anyone, so I'll have to assume everyone's listening. So hi, great to join you guys for this charity webinar. My name's Ben, and yeah, I'm a physio and nutritionist. So a little bit of a background about me. I started off doing personal training here in the UK and also teaching exercise classes. Then went on to study physiotherapy. And then also did a master's degree in human nutrition. And then on the side, I also compete in bodybuilding competitions. So the purpose of this talk that I'm giving today is kind of my passion is about how nutrition and physio can combine. So we don't want to be going into huge detail on nutrition, but just giving you guys a nice understanding of where developing a little bit more understanding of what we're eating and how that can help our patients, I think is really, really important. And I hope, I'm assuming everyone here is physiotherapists or similar profession would agree with that. So what we're going to cover in the next hour or so is going to look at soft tissue injury and prevention and recovery. We'll look a bit at bone health, osteoporosis and fracture healing and the role that our diet can play in that. And then osteoarthritis and joint health, again, an area where what we eat is really, really important. And then we will touch a little bit on chronic pain and a bit on orthopedics, so pre and post operative as well. So it's a little bit of a sort of overall summary. It's quite jam-packed. So if you've got any questions or anything, do save them till the end. Yeah, hope you guys enjoy it. So let's kind of get started. So a lot of people ask me like, why nutrition in physio? This is from the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy, which is our governing body for physio in the UK. And as you see, it's a science-based profession which does a whole person's approach, looks at health and well-being, which also includes the patient's general lifestyle. And I think we could all agree that nutrition is definitely an important part of our patient's general lifestyle outside of just what we're doing for physiotherapy. As also as physios, within our role is to maintain health for people of all ages, helping patients to manage pain and prevent disease. Again, what you're putting into your mouth and eating is going to be hugely important for that. And when you dig a little deeper in the research, find quotes such as this, says there is a need for rehabilitation researchers to team up with nutrition researchers. So it's definitely an emerging field that I'm really, really keen to learn more about. In terms of scope of practice, so this is obviously based in the UK, it might be slightly different where you guys are. Obviously, we're not dietitians or nutritionists, so we're not looking at specific dietary assessment and planning. That would be outside what would be seen as our role as a physio, but developing just a basic understanding of what our patients are eating and how this can affect their musculoskeletal health is definitely within our scope of practice. If you look at the HCPC, which is, again, a governing body in the UK, it talked about us knowing about the factors influencing individual variations in human ability and health status, and nutrition is definitely one of these. And interestingly, osteopaths and chiropractors in the UK, they're allowed to give nutritional advice. So I'm really passionate that physios should be able to have some understanding as well. So basically, to kind of wrap up the nice detailed intro, what we want to understand is why, although this guy here looks very, very happy with his pizza, that might not be so good if he's recovering from an injury, and why this girl here with her plate of vegetables might be doing slightly better, really. So a little bit of a summary of the basics so that we're all on the same page. So let's look at the macronutrients. So if we look at protein, so this is an organic compounds made of chains of amino acids, and think of these like the Lego bricks. So these are the building blocks of your body, and they're incredibly vital for human health. They have a variety of roles outside of just building muscle. So transport molecules, so such as the hemoglobin, that's going to bring the oxygen to. Oh, could someone just turn their mic off, because I can hear myself echoing, if that's okay? Thank you. So transport molecules bringing the oxygen to the muscles, which we're then in our physiotherapy are going to be rehabbing. Expression of DNA in our genetics, antibody functions are helping with your immune system. Bone health, incredibly important in recovery of or prevention of fractures. And then, of course, muscle structure and strength. This is just for completeness, a list of some common foods that are high in protein and how many grams of protein there is per 100 grams. That's quite a nice little chart. And there's meat products on the left and then plant products on the right. Next, we'll look at carbohydrates. So sugars, starches, and fibers within fruits, veggies, grains, and milk products. Please, could everyone mute their mic, just because I can keep hear myself echoing. And so these give us energy, fiber, incredibly important for our digestive health. They're also protein and fat sparing, so making sure you're getting the carbohydrates stops your body having to use protein or fat for energy and allows protein to do its job better. And of course, carbohydrates generally taste really nice as well, so that's always a positive. So this is quite a nice measure. This is called the glycemic index. It's, some say, a little outdated now. I quite like it. It's relatively simple for a summary presentation like this to get the grips of, and it compares how much a food increases your blood sugar over the 2 hours after you consume it, and it's from 0 to 100. So 100 would be a teaspoon of just pure white sugar. So we start with non-starchy green veggies, move up to fruits, dried fruits, rices, things like that, and then up to our highly processed, sugary type foods like this. So pure sugar would have a GI of 100. And in general, if you can be below 55 on the scale, there is a table you can find online and it has GI of all the foods. You can see just the foods on the left are generally a little bit healthier. So if you're eating way more foods that have got a higher GI than 55, that's not going to be maybe so optimal if we're in the early stages of recovering from an injury and we want to provide the optimal situation for our body. Next, we'll come to fats. Fats are a little bit confusing. So I kind of designed this family tree, which I find quite helpful. So if we split fats up into saturated and unsaturated fats, and that's just to do with their different chemical structure. Saturated fats are things like dairy products, butters, red meats, and then unsaturated fats can be divided into poly and monounsaturated. Monounsaturated being omega-7s and omega-9s, and then polyunsaturated being omega-6s and omega-3s. In general, saturated fats, we can have them in our diet, but it's something that we want to not be having way too many of. Omega-3s, omega-7 and 9s are very healthy, and omega-6s, again, completely vital for human health, but commonly in the Western diet anyway. So it's definitely omega-6s and maybe a little bit on the high side, but still plenty of health benefits of them. So the simple message really when it comes to dietary fats from an overall health point of view is loads and loads of omega-3. So this is fish products, flax seeds, chia seeds, things like that. 7 and 9, olives, avocado, sesame seeds, peanuts, cashews, hazelnuts, sesame oil. These are all going to be really healthy. And then we want to limit a little saturated fats. So red meats, oils, poultry skins, animal fats, things like that. Generally less than 10% of your diet wants to be coming from saturated fats. And then micronutrients, as I said, this is just an overall summary for physios on nutrition. So it's kind of like a degree in an hour. We want to be aware of how many different vitamins and micronutrients there are. So there's all the vitamins. This isn't even comprehensive, guys. So there's so many micronutrients. This is just to give you an understanding kind of how many there are. So yeah, if you've got any individual questions, let me know at the end. So hopefully now we're all vaguely on the same page. Let's look at soft tissue injury. So and how nutrition can affect this. So the first thing to know is this is a really it's really early in the science of this. So nutritional intervention to improve soft tissue function is not it's not got hundreds and hundreds of years of research behind it. If we look at an average team of, say, professional elite footballers of 25, and this research came from FC Barcelona, which is a very, very big football team in Europe, might expect 15 muscle injuries per season. If they each lead to 2 weeks missed of football, that's quite a big impact on the team. So definitely looking at the nutrition considerations for these to reduce injury risk and increase recovery is going to be important. So factors to really consider for sports injuries are making sure that the athletes haven't got chronic low energy availability. So this would be players who are eating way too little all the time and then being asked to perform at high level sports. That's going to increase their risk of injury. Making sure there's no specific nutrient deficiency, particularly protein, copper, omega-3 fatty acids, and vitamin C and D. Again, not going to be optimal for our musculoskeletal health and could raise risk of injury. Overall diet quality and alcohol intake, and then also body composition is another one. If our body composition is completely out and not so ideal, that could raise the risk of soft tissue injury. This is a really interesting study which was done in Sweden, and they looked at 340 teenage athletes who gave data on their nutrition, so what they're eating, their sleep, and their injury risk. This was done throughout a university year, I believe. So autumn and spring term of a school year in Sweden. They used a reliable, valid index to measure their nutrition. And the main thing they found was, of these 340 elite level teenage athletes, only 20% of them were eating enough fruit, 39% were eating enough vegetables, and 43% were eating enough fish. So these are the high level athletes. This is way below what they should be. And also that those people that got their nutrition targets and slept at least 8 hours, 5 days a week in the autumn term actually had reduced odds of getting an injury in the spring term. So those who built up better healthy eating habits, better sleeping patterns, then actually had lower risk later in the year. So I think that's a really, really important piece of understanding. But let's say you do get a muscle injury, what do you do next? So you might have 2 weeks where you're not doing so much because you're injured. So there's a bit of a reduced muscle protein synthesis. So we might want to change protein a little. So we can add a slight increase of protein. We can maybe have protein more often through the day. And this can help prevent so much of the muscle atrophy that we would see as physios when there is an injury and then you don't use the muscle and then starts to not become as strong. Generally 2 to 2.5 grams per kilogram body weight per day is a figure that's quite commonly quoted. Also, as this girl is here, suddenly reducing your energy expenditure. So a lot of people think, well, we need to suddenly be eating way less calories and eating way less overall. Probably not really. We don't want to drastically reduce it because we've also got to provide our body with the energy to recover from the injury. So we don't want to be stopping eating. You want to keep eating, but just maybe definitely not overeating. The other thing a lot of people who I hear say about taking fish oil, so omega-3s, after you're injured, making sure you're getting some olive oil, some oily fish, so sardines, mackerel, trout, something like that in your diet, and flax seeds, or potentially an omega-3 supplement is something that could be considered as a healthy thing to do after you've had a muscle injury, but really maximize your omega-3 in your diet. That's going to be a healthy choice. In terms of micronutrients, your meal should be focused on getting adequate fruit and vegetables of a variety of colors. That will give you the polyphenols and micronutrients to help those tissues and those cells recover. And then zinc, vitamin A, and vitamin C. These are the ones that theoretically, these are going to be really, really important for soft tissue recovery. But we probably don't want to be overloading with supplements. If you've got enough fruit and veg of various types in your diet, that's going to be sufficient in the days after a muscle injury. Obviously, tendons and ligaments is quite a high cause or a common cause of soft tissue injury. So generally, well, this is the figure I found, 30% of physio or MSK consultations may be because of a tendon or ligament injury. They're highly based upon their collagen matrix structure. So we'll come to collagen again in a second, but this is really important. Less vascularity, so their blood supply is less good than muscle tissue, but they are still responsive to exercise. So nutrition is still required and it's still worth us thinking about. So there's some real key differences between connective tissue and muscle tissue. First of all is that the collagen, core tendon collagen turnover is very slow, almost potentially nothing compared to muscles. So this makes healing slower. It implies, this is the analogy I've heard, that tendons grow more like a tree. So like rings of a tree, they grow outwards rather than a muscle which recycles cells. There's a fascinating study, which is the second on my list of references at the bottom, Heinmeier and colleagues. And it looks at cadaver studies from people who were alive during nuclear bomb testing in the US. And it looks at samples of their Achilles tendon, and it finds this 14 carbon isotope was present in the core of their Achilles tendon, but then outer in the Achilles tendon did not have this isotope in, where they had lived later on, because that isotope was only around after the nuclear explosions. I highly recommend checking out that paper and tell me if I've interpreted it wrong, but I found that really, really interesting. The other thing that's key about connective tissue compared to muscle tissue, particularly tendons, is when you do some exercise, they get this like shunt of nutrition or blood supply, very little compared to muscles. And then effectively your circulation goes and concentrates on the contractile tissue such as muscle. So any nutrients that are important for tendon healing have to be in the system ready to go before you do the exercise, before you do the physio exercises. That's quite an important factor. So there's a few really important things with vitamin C and collagen. So collagen is the main protein that makes up the structure of the tendons and ligaments, and vitamin C is the main cofactor in putting together that collagen to build up this new tendon or ligament when we're trying to recover from an injury. And actually the first ever controlled nutrition study, 1757, was done in a British Royal Navy ship on scurvy. The guy was James Lind. He got 12 sailors, split them up into 6 groups of 2, and gave the first 6 some random interventions, I believe, for 14 days. And none of these people with what they were given got better. But then the last group of 2, he gave 2 oranges and a lemon a day. And these people got rid of their scurvy symptoms. At the time, they didn't know what vitamins were, but it later turned out that it was vitamin C deficiency, because they'd been on their ship for so long, they hadn't had any vitamin C, they got scurvy, and it was these guys that got better. So if you want an importance of vitamin C, look at the symptoms of scurvy, and no one would want that. So that's where that's going to be important. So this first study, I believe, is a crossover design study, and these guys looked at oral collagen supplementation alongside a calf exercise plan. I believe there was 18 people. Yes, 18 participants. Function and pain versus placebo in Achilles tendinopathy. And they found that if those that took an oral collagen supplement, their results were just accelerated if they were already doing a structured loading plan. So the physio plan was important, but this collagen supplement just was found to help this a little bit. However, it's a very, very small study. It's early days. We can't draw any conclusions from it. This next paper is really interesting. These had 8 participants, and they compared 5 grams versus 15 grams of vitamin C enriched gelatin being very high in collagen, with 6 minutes of skipping. So like I talked about that shunt of nutrition, I believe they did 3 bouts of 6 minutes skipping a day. And they found that those who had the vitamin C enriched gelatin with this high level exercise had higher blood level biomarkers of collagen synthesis. But it's definitely worth noting that those people that didn't have any collagen or vitamin C still showed markers of collagen synthesis. It's just that we could maybe get a little bit more by having the vitamin C or collagen, I believe, an hour before the exercise. This paper is, again, really interesting. So this is a systematic review, and it looks at just vitamin C and how this could increase type 1 collagen synthesis. What's important with vitamin C, there's no adverse effects, so no huge risk, but limited human studies. So we don't really know, although it's promising. This table, though, is from this paper. The reference is bottom left, and it shows the preclinical on the left evidence for the benefits of vitamin C after a musculoskeletal injury, and then the clinically proven benefits on the right. I think this is quite a really nice table to look at all the potential benefits of vitamin C. So improved collagen matrix, faster rate of chondrocyte development, reduced scar tissue formation. So definitely a lot of benefits here. So last one is a review paper, and it kind of summarizes current data suggests consuming gelatin or hydrolyzed collagen could increase collagen synthesis and decrease injury rates. So yeah, this is definitely an area I'm really passionate about and can see us learning more about in future. I personally would summarize vitamin C and collagen with soft tissue injury in a risk versus reward way. So in the UK, the new reference amount of vitamin C you need per day is 40 milligrams. However, the tolerable upper limit, so this is the amount before you would start having too much, is 1,000. So you can have quite a lot of vitamin C over the limit before it becomes way too much. And generally collagen's pretty well tolerated. A few people might get some mild gastrointestinal discomfort, but overall risk versus reward, the risk of making sure, we're talking about just making sure you're getting plenty of vitamin C, dense fruit and veg, and potentially a collagen supplement. The risk of that is very low, and the reward is potentially tangible. So it's definitely something, I think that, like I said, this is just a summary presentation for you guys to read more and potentially look at building into your practice within your scope. So let's park that. That was soft tissue. Next, let's look at skeletal health, bone density. So again, something else that we will really commonly see within musculoskeletal care and physio. So this is the analogy I really like for bone health. And think about your bank account. So two types of cells. You've got your bone forming cells. So these guys want to build bone in and make it more dense. So think about them they're your savers, they're trying to pay more money into the bone bank account. And then equally, you've constantly got these cells that are taking money away and trying to pay out of the bank account. So ideally, we want to help the cells that are building in. This green and red is just a cartoon. They don't actually look like that. We want to help the guys that are paying in more and stop the guys that are trying to take away, because there's this constant cycle of new cells and old cells getting resorbed. You may have seen this table on the left before. So this shows the kind of average chart of bone health during your lifetime. So you can see kind of right down far left when you're born, when you go through your teenage years. And we want to get that curve as high as we possibly can, up to the highest possible peak bone mass. And then after sort of mid-20s, early 30s, you want to slow this rate of decline down as much as possible. You can see for females, menopause is a time where bone density loss is accelerated, so of particular importance. So overall, help the cells that are building muscle and slow down the muscles that slow down the cells that are reducing bone, not muscle, my apologies. So what are the basic ingredients for building strong bone? We need protein, that's really important. Vitamin D, calcium, vitamin K, vitamin C, magnesium and potassium. Potentially avoiding excessive vitamin A, definitely avoiding a chronic energy deficit, so not eating enough over a long period, and smoking. Don't want to be doing that for many reasons, including bone health. So let's look at protein first. So this is actually important even from before you're born. When you're still a fetus, how much protein is in your maternal diet, so what your mum's eating, can start laying the foundations for strong bone. Approximately 30% of bone tissue mass is protein, so generally in the form of collagen. So protein is important for bone health, not just muscles. As a rough guide, 10 to 35% of total calories from a protein source. In the UK, the current RNI, so reference nutrient intake, is 0.75 grams per kilogram, but there's suggestion this should be raised. So this is kind of an indication that protein's being seen as a real important part to highlight in the diet. Calcium. So this is the most abundant nutrient in the human body, approximately 1.2 kilograms of your body being calcium, I believe. And 99% of calcium is in your skeleton and your teeth being part of skeleton, so in your bones and your teeth. It's essential for human health. We can't produce it endogenously, so we can't produce it ourselves, and it works synergistically, so it works with load-bearing exercise to help build strong bones and build stronger, denser bones. What's really important with calcium is the homeostasis, so the maintenance of our calcium, and it must be between 90 and 110 milligrams per liter in our blood. Okay, so let's say blood calcium is high, you've got plenty of calcium in your blood, then that calcium can be deposited in bones to build stronger bone. If your blood calcium is low, so you don't have so much calcium, then the cells are really your body's very keen to get that calcium back up above 90. So it either takes it from food. So if you don't have enough calcium in your diet, it might take it from bone and put it into the blood to restore blood calcium. So that's why calcium is important to have in our diet, to make sure that we're keeping it so that it can continually build those new bone cells and keep paying into our bone bank account. Calcium sources, dairy foods, some plant-based foods such as tofu, sardines, oily fish, any fish where you eat the bones or the skin, and lots of green leafy veg. Some green leafy veg such as spinach do have oxalates in, and these can basically kind of like link to calcium and make your body not digest them so well. So that's definitely something to think about. Magnesium and potassium, two really important micronutrients. So I found this was interesting. There's some lab studies showing that during menopause, which is a time where we know bone health dips right down, serum magnesium, amount of magnesium in females' blood can drop. So that's quite an important indication of the importance of menopause. And this is a study, I believe, of 8,000 adults in South Korea, and it linked, so it just came up with a correlation. No causation can be implied at all, but the higher potassium intake linked with higher bone density in women in a large scale epidemiological study. I think that in a way, magnesium and potassium are like just good markers of a healthy diet, because if you look at the sources, like this looks like a pretty good day's eating. I think that just higher magnesium and high potassium, if you were to look at people's record of what they're eating, the people who are eating high magnesium and high potassium are just eating really healthily compared to those who don't. So probably lots of their health markers might also show a positive correlation. Vitamin D, so the sunshine vitamin, really, really important for bone health. Stimulates bone matrix formation, so really helps those green cells out. Optimizes calcium bioavailability, so how much calcium you actually absorb from what you eat. And this is how you've got to think about it. Let's say you've eaten enough and you've hit your calcium target, so you've got enough calcium. There's no benefit of having extra beyond that. So don't think of it as shooting another arrow at the same target. When it comes to vitamin D, it's like two different targets. If you've got enough calcium or enough vitamin D, you need to have both for them to work really well. Let's look at vitamin D in a bit more detail, because it's really quite important. So vitamin D turns on, in inverted commas, gene expression for muscle growth and calcium absorption. So as I said, improves calcium bioavailability. What's important, if your blood vitamin D concentration is below this cutoff 75, which is commonly used as kind of like the healthy cutoff, then about 10 to 15% of the calcium you eat might actually get absorbed and become usable for you. But if your blood vitamin D is above 75, then this number can go to above 30%. So you can see how much more calcium from your diet you'll get just by having enough vitamin D. Really, really important. So this is a really great study, and this is from Finland, and it looks at a group of 756 recruits into the Finnish military, and I believe they go through an 8-week training plan. I believe it's 8 weeks. 8 weeks, I think, might be 16. Anyway, it's from 2006, and in this group of 756 army recruits, there were 22 stress fractures during their training, which is obviously a time where they're suddenly having to exercise loads and doing a whole load of extra training. And all they did was they found the median, so the midpoint in vitamin D blood concentration at the start. So nothing to do with like normative values, just the midpoint. So find the middle person of vitamin D concentration and then split the group into two halves. And if you were below the median, then there were 18 stress fractures, and if you were above the median, there was only 4. So you were, I think, 3.6 times more likely to get a stress fracture if you were below median. 25 OHD is the name of the vitamin D marker in the blood. 3.6 times more likely to sustain a stress fracture. So a real nice study, and I believe a very similar study has been replicated in the British Royal Marines since this, and kind of showed similar findings. So guideline for vitamin D, at least 10 to 20 minutes sunlight, definitely in the summer months. This is in the UK, where there is literally no sun. Particularly, I don't think we've had a sunny day for about 3 weeks now. And this is even more important depending on what latitude you are. So the higher latitude, the less time of the year there is where there's sun available to create vitamin D from. UK guidelines are that we should take a 10 microgram supplement per day for all adults. This may be different where all you guys are. And also maintaining a healthy body weight. If you've got excess body fat tissue, vitamin D can be sequestered. There's at the bottom here. Sequestered basically just means hidden. So your body fat can basically make the vitamin D not available for the rest of your body, so it's no good. And vitamin D sources, again, oily fish, those that you eat, the skin and the bone, eggs, mushrooms, and supplements, of course. And some countries have fortified foods, cereals, milks, drinks that have added vitamin D in. Some countries these are really popular in, other countries not so popular, so that's definitely something worth looking out for. And yes, mushrooms increase in vitamin D content if you leave them in the sun. That's a cool bit of knowledge as well. Vitamin K, I'm really passionate about vitamin K. So vitamin K is found in green leafy vegetables. There's a strong biological evidence for the importance of vitamin K for bone health. So yeah, vitamin K, really, really important for bone health. However, there's a lack of support for supplementing vitamin K. So I don't think a supplement of vitamin K, I've personally never seen any evidence that really promotes it. But what is really key is that if you have an overall dietary pattern that's rich in F&V, fruit and veg, then this is associated with higher bone density. So we know vitamin K is very important for bone health, but potentially it's very difficult to say, well, is it just vitamin K, or maybe it's the whole matrix of all these micronutrients in something like a nice green leafy salad? So overall, I can't see any downside really of having green leafy vegetables unless you're allergic. It's definitely something that's worth promoting to people for overall health, and getting plenty of green veg, and it helps promote you paying more money into your bank account and prevent you taking money out. And these are the type of things that have loads of vitamin K in. So that's a real positive thing. So we've done soft tissue. I'll give you guys a chance to breathe, and me as well. I hope everyone can still hear and see, because I literally can't hear or see anyone. I'm just staring at a screen. So I hope it's okay. So we've done soft tissue injury, bone health, and now we're going to look at osteoarthritis, chronic pain, and I've also got a little bit to finish off on pre and post operations operatives, orthopedic as well. So osteoarthritis, another area I'm really passionate about. So generally, OA treatment, how it is now, is very primarily aimed at symptom management. So we're managing the symptoms of osteoarthritis. So as physios, we'll know all about strengthening. We're strengthening the muscles around an osteoarthritic joint. We're maybe modifying activity, so getting people to maybe do a bit more exercise, maybe ease off on some exercise that's flaring up their pain, potentially analgesia. And then if this stuff doesn't work, then generally we jump to surgery. And I think that nutrition and weight loss forms a really important missing point that's not commonly spoke about. Certainly where I'm based, we don't talk about this enough in osteoarthritis patients. And what I think is really interesting is when you look at the symptoms of inflammation, redness, heat, swelling, pain, function loss, that's very similar to osteoarthritis. And it's also highly known that diet can affect our systemic inflammation hugely. So yeah, really important. What we're eating, I'm very passionate, is very important for osteoarthritis. So what's being more commonly talked about is that this low-grade systemic inflammation may play a greater role in symptoms of OA than what's actually shown on the X-ray, and this is where nutrition can play a role. So let's have a look at some of the aspects as we go through. So weight loss, losing weight, is a gold standard treatment for improving osteoarthritis symptoms. So if you are overweight or obese, this increases the likelihood of total knee replacement by 40% if you're overweight, or 100% if you're obese, in osteoarthritis patients. And there's a stronger link in younger patients. So if you're younger and you're obese and overweight, this puts you at even greater risk of osteoarthritis. This is really interesting, actually, this overweight person in hand. So this is based off of, it's one of my references at the bottom. This is a epidemiological study in Holland. And they found a link between central adiposity, so visceral adipose tissue, and osteoarthritis of the hand, which is obviously a non-load bearing joint. There's no reason why fat around your stomach would increase the load through someone's hand. However, the fat around the stomach does promote systemic inflammation, cytokines and things like that, which could therefore be damaging to the joints of the hand and therefore raise OA. So I think that's really, really interesting. So there's this non-mechanical link. Overall, obesity increases systemic low-grade inflammation through pro-inflammatory cytokines. So as physios, promoting health and wellness, as we said right at the start, is key in our job role. And so we should be doing more, I think, to help our patients lose weight. So dietary fats like that family tree we looked at the start. This is a paper which shows a little bit of info we can take on. So this was in the USA, 2,092 NEOA patients, and they had follow-ups every year for 4 years, and they looked at total fats and saturated fats and found that these significantly positively related with loss of joint space width in people with osteoarthritic knees. And then this other one shows a positive association between plasma omega-6 and specifically AA, arachnoid acid. That's one of the omega-6s, and knee synovitis, so inflammation of the synovium of the knee. However, these are both correlations, not causations. We can't draw any conclusions, but we could say that there's an inkling that those who are eating a more saturated fat and more omega-6s are at greater likelihood of maybe getting some osteoarthritic symptoms, but we can't draw conclusions from this alone. Fish oils. So this is probably one of the highest evidence areas. Fish oils are really good for overall general health. So this is a 2-year-long RCT, and they got one group of 83 people. All the people involved have symptomatic osteoarthritis, I should say. And in this group, they gave them a high dose fish oil, 4.5 grams. This is quite a lot of fish oil per day. And in the low dose group, they gave them 0.45 grams, so 10 times less. However, 0.45 grams is more similar to what kind of a standard omega-3 capsule you would get from the supermarket or from the pharmacy would be, and 4.5 is excessively high. So yeah, that's equivalent to a standard capsule. After 2 years, they both saw improvements in pain and function, but actually the low dose group did better than the high dose group. And what I think is evidence in itself is they tried to get ethical approval for the study to have a control group that had 0 fish oils, and they couldn't get ethical approval for that. So if it's deemed unethical to prevent, I believe they're in their 50s and 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s-year-old people, if it's unethical, deemed unethical to prevent them from having fish oil or having oily fish for 2 years, that's quite a big hint of evidence as to the importance of fish oils, not just for OA, but for overall health. So a standard 1 gram fish oil capsule per day, if you're not already eating a high fish diet, could be a good positive adjunct to your overall OA management. Also, other benefits such as cardiovascular, very likely. Gut microbiota. So gut microbiome is used for a lot of things, but potentially some people have said it's like the missing link between diet and OA. However, I think that although there's this suggestion of a strong relationship, I think that if you look at the dietary aspects that maybe promote worse OA outcomes and promote worse gut microbiome outcomes, this is low fiber, high sugar, high saturated fat. So is it that there's a missing link, or do they even need a link? I think maybe it just happens to be that they get worse because those people who aren't eating enough fiber, who have got high fat, high sugar diets, just have worse microbiome health. They're generally more obese and therefore have worse OA symptoms. I'm not so sure that there has to be the link. I might be wrong, but I think these are three things we want to be advising our patients with OA symptoms against. And yeah, I really like this sentence. OA is now clearly established as a low-grade inflammatory condition. The gut microbiota appears to be the missing link. Maybe it is. I just think those 3 points I've put there are really important. So turmeric or curcumin. This is one that's had quite a lot of attention. Curcumin being the active compound within turmeric. And from what I could find, I found 2 2016 systematic reviews and meta-analysis of RCTs. In 2016, there was support that turmeric or curcumin may help alleviate OA symptoms, but a lack of power, my icon of the battery and the warning, lack of power to kind of come to any conclusions. In 2019, similar thing, again hinting to it, but still, although building not enough understanding that we could clearly say turmeric can be helpful and make that a true evidence-based suggestion. Still needs some more longer term, larger scale studies. There was this one parallel arm study, and I believe this, it's bottom left is the reference. This was 2019, and this compared 3 supplements of 500 milligrams curcumin daily or 250 milligrams diclofenac, so pharmaceutical intervention per day, 28 days. And they found that 94% of the curcumin group and 97% of the diclofenac group reported that their knee-OA symptoms improved by over 50%. So you would say, well, actually, you could avoid taking a medication and just take curcumin tablets instead. Maybe that's a healthier option. However, there's only 139 people. It only lasted 28 days. That's not very long for OA. As we know, it's quite a long progressive condition. And it was only 1 dose. So we don't know, should we go higher curcumin? Maybe we should go lower, higher diclofenac, lower, not sure. And it was completely unblinded. So everybody knew what they were taking. So it's not the highest rigor study, but an interesting indication. Collagen, again, important for OA. Evidence is still emerging, but promising. And this paper, so effective collagen supplementation on osteoarthritis symptoms. This is an interesting paper with a few forest plots that we can look at. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with forest plots. I'm assuming as this is all to medical professionals, you've at least seen this before. So this looked at pain, joint stiffness, functional limitation. This is quite small, as you can see, only about 4 papers involved. But what we're looking at are, I'll just move my mouse, so hopefully you guys can see my cursor, is these tables here. And you can see how they look at all the results, and it comes up with whether it favors collagen, so the intervention, or favors the placebo. And you can see in general for pain at the top, stiffness and functional limitation, with the exception of a few studies, the general trend is that collagen did better than placebo in these RCTs. This one I'm going to zoom in on. Looks at VAS score, and you can see here again quite a clear favoring that collagen as a supplement did better than a placebo intervention in terms of reducing VAS for osteoarthritis symptoms. Next, after we've come to osteoarthritis, it leads nicely to go on to pre and post-operative, and I suppose particular on knee or hip or joint replacements, but through osteoarthritis, that's probably the most common orthopedic surgery. Now, this study is a cohort of 1,200 patients with femoral neck fracture who went to a UK hospital over a 3-year period. All of these patients were screened using the Malnutrition Universal Screening Tool, so to get a rough idea of what everyone's eating. And they found that if you had a higher risk of malnutrition, so your diet wasn't as good, this independently predicted mortality, so increased risk of dying, your increased chance of staying in hospital, as obviously as physios, and in general, if you can be out of hospital and take the pressure off the healthcare system, that's a great thing. And then the need to be discharged to supported living rather than going back to living independently, all were independently predicted by not having as good nutrition prior to being admitted to hospital. So this systematic review looks at nutritional supplements and are they something that we should be thinking about more in total hip and total knee replacement. So first thing to know, limited evidence. This is 2018, relatively recent. It's limited. We can't come to huge amounts of knowledge. What's really key is that the most frail sarcopenic patients have the most limited protein reserve. If you imagine, they've got the least muscle, probably the least dense bone, so therefore they've got the least reserve of nutrients to draw upon. So what they're taking in is even more important, because it's, you know, they're already frail, so we can't be putting them through too much, and we've got to make sure that they've got the nutrients. Again, low risk of these supplements. It's not like we're doing highly risky things, but potential benefits. So I think that's really important in a lot of emerging areas, not just in nutrition, but where the science isn't there to absolutely say this is the best thing to do. We've got to look at what is the risk of doing it, and if the risk is very low and there are potential benefits, then we should be discussing it. And definitely that if we can optimize nutrition pre-operation, this will help manage the surgical stress response, so what kind of throws things all off kilter after surgery. And this is a table I took from this paper, again, reference bottom left. So I'll take you through it. So if we just focus on the left-hand side, so pre-admission nutritional support. So look at these bullet points. So this would be weeks before surgery when they're at home, and look at what people are eating, give them information before, make sure that they're getting the supplements weeks before they come in, so that this is already in place. Then we'll move along to preoperative nutrition support. I'm going to use my mouse so you guys can see preoperative nutrition support. And again, this is the day before. Make sure that people, if they're not, you know, that they're not in an awful nutritional state, that they're getting the carbohydrates, that they're being told this is what's important, and that their hospital diet includes all the nutrients that they need. Then directly post-operative, that we monitor what they're having, that they're getting that nutritional support that's required directly after surgery. And then the day after they get home, they've got the supplements, proteins, iron, vitamin D, for instance. They've got idea on a diet of what to eat. They've got information. And most importantly, what I think is key for all areas of physio nutrition, they've got a follow-up, or they've got someone to ask questions if they're not sure. So I think that's a really, really nice table. And last of all, I know this is a jam-packed summary of everything, chronic musculoskeletal pain. So in terms of chronic pain, this is probably the area I would say I'm least confident that there's high amounts of knowledge in. Some people may know more than me, but very hard to say that an individual one of these micronutrients, like we looked for at the start, is linked with clear reduction in chronic musculoskeletal pain. This is quite interesting. 2020 systematic review found that in 9 papers, regardless of thinking about what the actual intervention was, in 7 of them, if you just changed diet in some way, it led to pain relieving effects. So this is quite a nice indication that diet is playing at least some role, and maybe more for other individuals than others. And definitely there's some inconclusive evidence that patients with fibromyalgia or rheumatoid arthritis might have higher rates of micronutrient deficiency compared to controls. These 2 papers, so one of them here, again, as this presentation is just a summary, found that percentage of protein in the diet correlated with levels of pain in women with fibromyalgia. So those people who were eating less protein were in more pain. And a small study, 43 patients with 44 controls. In this other study, this had 71 overweight or obese OA patients. Now, this study is interesting. So this looked at momentary analysis. So they looked at different times, and they found that when people were eating more, they were in more pain, but we don't know, are people in pain and so therefore comfort eating more, or are they eating a load more, eating a bit of junk food and then getting better pain? So it's kind of, it shows a link, but we can't say that one leads to the other. In terms of best current knowledge that I'd recommend, we'd emphasize a plant-based diet or Mediterranean diet pattern for those who are experiencing chronic pain. So definitely prioritizing fruit and vegetables, really, really important. Having high fiber diets, adequate fish intake, and reducing processed foods. So those patients who have got chronic pains, these are kind of what we can say is going to be a really good thing for them to do to help go alongside their physiotherapy. And this is a graph I made quite nicely that sums up the Mediterranean diet. And this is a really well supported diet pattern that's good to go for. So it works as a pyramid, as you can see around the pyramid. Make sure people are getting adequate water, having a little bit of alcohol such as wine in moderation with your meals, and then on the base, making sure they're getting plenty of physical activity and that food is a social occasion rather than just consistently snacking. Every day you're getting vegetables, fruit, whole grains, legumes, olive oil. A few times a week you're having seafood, nuts, things like that. And then maybe once or twice a week, things, poultry, cheeses, yogurt, eggs. And then less than once a week would be your red meat, your sweets, processed foods, which are a bit of a treat. So in summary, I know this is information overload for everyone. Nutrition is an emerging field in musculoskeletal care. It's not a hugely well-known thing, but I'm really excited by the future of it. For areas such as bone health, there are some pretty clear messages. And I think that as, apologies, I don't know what all your professions are. I'm assuming around physiotherapy or similar colleagues, we should have a minimum understanding of healthy diet. It's our role to promote health in those that we see. And yeah, as always, don't give advice that's outside your scope of practice. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. If you've got any questions, it might be easier to send them via email, bensteele-turner@gmail.com. Feel free to take a picture of that and send me any questions, so that I can answer them with a little bit more time, rather than off the cuff. And you can make them a bit more personal questions. And definitely the best way to get hold of me is on Instagram, where my handle's @Physio-Nutrition. And yeah, if you have taken any photos of any of my stuff or anything, that's absolutely fine. But please tag me @Physio-Nutrition, just so I do that. So I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Apologies, I can't see or hear any of you. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful session. And frankly, I learned more from you from this small webinar than all of my masters. It was really knowledgeable. And we would like to have you in more further classes. Join with us.
Sure.
And we have with us all the physiotherapy students only. So
Okay,
they have
awesome.
learned a lot. And they have also messaged me personally that the class is going very well.
Awesome. That's brilliant. Thank you.
And
Great to hear.
I request everyone to follow him at Physio Nutrition in Instagram. And frankly, trust me, you will be learning a lot from his post than the books around you, because books make you bored, but his post will not. So
Awesome.
kindly follow him. And if you have any queries, any doubt, you can mail him. Okay.
Yeah.
He's always ready to answer your questions, answer all the queries. He's just very energetic. Okay. So keep in touch with him, and he will keep you engaged with his awesome work. Thank you very much, sir.
No worries. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Sorry I couldn't hear or see anyone, so I kind of feel a little bit alone just talking to a screen in my house, but I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, sir, you can check the chat section. A lot of them are thanking you.
Awesome. I'll have a look now. Let me just stop the share. Oh, thank you. Awesome. Oh, I can see it. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I can see all your messages. That's very kind. Awesome. If anyone's got any individual questions, Physio Nutrition, PHYSIUTRITION, feel free to